Greetings, children, and welcome to a special digital edition of Modern Western Civ. You can't see my face because I'm using a screencast-o-matic app, which I have to upgrade to get my face on. So you're deprived of my face yet again, and I feel sorry for you. But I hope you can overcome this and still have a productive 40 minutes, or I guess today 30 minutes in modern Western civilization. Today, I want to go over that medieval literature that we read last week. And I'm sure it is not fresh in your mind, so I'm going to take our way all the way through it until we get up to Dante's Inferno, which is the brand new one for today. In the first piece of reading you did of the medieval literature, you read Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, where you were introduced to the knight, the merchant, and the plowman. The knight and the merchant were lauded by the author. They were praised for their truth, their honor, their generousness, their courtesy, their chivalry, their honest work, their peaceful and perfect charity, and their love of Christ and Christian living. The merchant, on the other hand, was the bad guy. He was the villain. He sat high on his horse. He had a forking beard and motley dress, and he made himself out to be so perfect. And of course, he was riddled with debt, and debt in the Middle Ages was a damning thing to carry around, and the merchant was saddled with that. Here, as we'll see over and over again, Christian virtues are honored over and over again. The Roman Catholic Church is exceedingly powerful during this era, and they believed it was a sin to loan money at interest. It was called usury. So the fact that the merchant was in debt because he'd accepted loans, this was a potentially damning thing for him. Meanwhile, the good, honest knight and farmer, they were living the right way according to the church, according to the feudal pyramid, and you could see Chaucer honoring them while he dislikes the merchant. In the second reading, we looked at the Song of Roland, and Roland is like your perfect example of a medieval hero. He is honorable, he is brave, he is loyal to his king, he fights for his country, he fights against Muslims, he fights against infidels. People just think Roland is perfect. And the part of the story we read about Roland is the very end of Roland's life. He's fought on the battlefield and he's wounded. He's bleeding out there on the battlefield. And it says that even though he's dying, all he can think about is how fortunate he is to have lived the life he did. And he honors God. And he humbly prays for forgiveness of any sins he has, sins he knew he committed or sins he committed by accident. He asks God for forgiveness. And then at the very end, the author writes that God sends his angels, Gabriel, Michael, and they escort Roland to paradise. They take him up and they escort his soul to the heavenly gates. Now, if you're a medieval Catholic, this is the perfect end to the perfect life. The good, just, brave, honorable knight, even though he's slain on the battlefield, his soul lives on in heaven. He's lived the right way. In the words of St. Paul, he has run the race. At last he has finished. And it's a beautiful moment. But not everyone, according to medieval authors, is going to be so lucky. The final reading, and this is the one we have not gone over yet, is Dante's Divine Comedy. And it is a three-part story where the author Dante, escorted by the Roman poet Virgil, and you may remember Virgil from our Roman section, he wrote the Aeneid, which is the new Roman origin story for the Emperor Augustus. He's responsible for that famous line, "In Rome to thine alone with awful sway to rule mankind and make the world obey," the idea of Roman order. But anyways, it is Dante, and this Dante always Dante and Virgil. And Virgil always reminds me, if you've ever been to Epcot in Disney World, there is a feature called The American Experience. And they have these robots tell you the story of American history. And the hosts are Ben Franklin and Mark Twain. I feel like Virgil's in that Mark Twain role from that ride, kind of your literary captain taking you through the world of Western civilization. But anyways, so Virgil and Dante, the author, he's in his own story, they're going to go through this trip through the afterlife. They're going to go through hell and purgatory and heaven. While you're reading this, I have kind of a fun thought process for you, and I'm actually going to have you write on it at the end of class. So, part of the Divine Comedy is not funny to us anymore because a lot of the people that Dante inserts into heaven and purgatory and hell are real people. They were the celebrities, for lack of a better term, of this era. So, excuse me. So, what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that you were just tapped to write a reboot of Dante's Divine Comedy, and it's going to be set in the 21st century. Dante included 14th century celebrities, 14th century celebrities, and people from history he placed in heaven and hell and purgatory for various reasons. If you were writing this today, if you were tapped to write the script of the reboot of Dante's Divine Comedy for a 21st century audience, I want to know, who would you put in heaven? Either a celebrity, they don't have to be dead yet, or a historical figure. Who's in purgatory, waiting to get into the pearly gates, but not good enough to get in automatically? And who is damned to hell? Who would you put there and why? Think of historical figures or celebrities, or even real people, people you know if you want to. But only if you put them in heaven. I don't want you sending anybody to purgatory or hell that we know. That's mean. But we have some nice people, I think, who heaven bound, according to Dante at least. So, play with that. Have fun with that. The story goes, abandon all hope, ye who enter here, is the sign on the door to hell. And Virgil and Dante go inside, and they see quite a sight. I want to take you through this poem, because it's a lot of Old English. It's a little bit difficult. So let me guide you through it. So Dante and Virgil, they're on their tour of the underworld, and they are first going to go into hell. And the first thing you read is a sign on the door, essentially, a sign on the entrance to hell. And the sign reads this: through me you pass into the city of woe. Through me you pass into eternal pain. Through me among the people lost for aye, just as the founder of my fabric moved. To rear me was the task of power divine, supremest wisdom and primeval love. Before me things create were none, save things eternal, and eternal I endure. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Yikes. Hell does not seem like a very good place to be. It doesn't seem like you're ever getting out. So Dante starts writing. He's the first person, and he refers to Virgil as master. So continuing. Such characters in Kellerdom I marked over a portal's lofty arch inscribed, which is saying that's the sign that was over the door. Whereat I thus said, Master, these words import hard meaning. Virgil, as one prepared, replied, Here thou must all distrust behind thee leave. Here be vile fear extinguished. We are come, where I have told thee we shall see the souls to misery doomed, whose intellectual good have lost. He's saying, listen, trust me, we're okay. We're just tourists. We're going to go check it out and see these souls that have been lost to paradise. And then it says, And when Virgil's hand he had stretched forth to mine with pleasant looks, whence I was cheered, into that secret place he led me. So Virgil takes him by the hand, and he leads him across the threshold into hell. And what he sees has an incredible, powerful effect on him. Dante says, this is what he sees. Here sighs with lamentations and loud moans resounded through the air, pierced by no star, and I wept at entering. He's saying the noises, the cries of pain, the moaning, and it was completely dark. I said I started to cry. Continuing, Dante says, various tongues, horrible languages, outcries of woe, accents of anger, voices deep and hoarse, with hands together smote that swelled the sounds, made up a tumult that forever whirls round through the air, with solid darkness stained, like to the sand that in the whirlwind flies. That's some writing. Dante pulling out all the stops to show you the pain, the chaos, the calamity, the cacophony of horrors that is hell. So Dante's shaken up. He's crying. He can't even take it. He's been there for 5 seconds, and he's panicking. And he says, I then with horror yet encompassed cried, O master, he's crying to Virgil, O Virgil, what is this I hear? What race are these who seem so overcome with woe? And he's saying, hey, who are these people? What could they have done to possibly deserve this? And I think Dante's expecting to hear These are the rapists. These are the murderers. These are the drug dealers. These are the Nickelback fans, the absolute worst people in the world. And instead, he hears this. Virgil answers. He said thus to me, "This miserable fate suffer the wretched souls of those who lived without praise or blame, with that ill band of angels mixed who nor rebellious proved, nor yet were true to God, but for themselves were only. From God's bounds heaven drove them forth, not to impair his luster, nor the depth of hell receives them, let the accursed tribe should glory thence with exaltation vain." He's saying, yeah, these aren't the murderers. These aren't the rapists. These are just people, for lack of a better term, are a little bit selfish, that only cared about themselves. And so they have been damned to hell. Now, in Dante's description, there are 7 circles. This is the nice part of hell, for lack of a better term. But as Dante shows, it's not all that nice. So why do we read these 3 stories? The Canterbury Tales, the Divine Comedy, and the Song of Roland? Because the unifying characteristic I want you to understand is Christianity. The people of the Middle Ages were obsessed with Christianity, whether it's living the right way, like in the Canterbury Tales, or the afterlife, like in Roland or the Divine Comedy. Heaven and hell were as real to them as the grass under their feet and the sky over their heads, and this drove every part of them. And it'll eventually drive them to cross the continent, to go to the Holy Land, to fight a people they've never seen before, for a scrap of land they've only read about. We call that the Crusades. But let's make that our story for another day.